Hi guys, welcome back. Mr. Hescox here talking about Chapter 2, Section 1. These are all the chemicals involved in cells. We're going to talk about the four organic compounds, and we're going to start by talking about reactions. So chemical reactions take place within a cell. We need the water within a cell to give us the place for chemical reactions to occur. They're made up of many different elements. An element is a substance composed of only one single atom, such as sodium, magnesium, such as carbon. Oxygen is an atom. All of the elements on Earth, there's about 25 that we really need. So the big three, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen. And then you have to add in nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, some sodium, things like that. All of those together will give us what we need. An atom is the smallest unit that is still an element. So each atom is different, each type of atom. If you combine two or more atoms, you make a compound. A chemical reaction is where we break bonds between atoms and compounds and remake new bonds. There are four organic molecules needed for life. The first one is a carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are what we call carbs. They're your breads, your grains, and things like that. They are made of sugars and smaller sugar molecules from plants. Your carbohydrates start out as glucose or fructose. In many different forms, they're recombined, just like bricks. You can make all different kinds of things out of bricks. You can make all different kinds of large carbohydrates out of smaller carbohydrates. The chemical formula for glucose. Now, this is super important. Come quiz time, come standardized testing time. C, which is carbon, H, and then O. Carbon 6, hydrogen 12, oxygen 6. This means that there is a chain of 6 carbons and 12 oxygens. What happens in this type of molecule? Glucose, as a chain of carbons, basically forms a hexagonal ring. And these rings can be connected together to make larger and larger molecules. Now, a simple sugar is one single ring. The two most common examples are glucose, which we have here, and then fructose, which actually looks more like a pentagon. Bear with me, I can't draw that good. And by making complex carbohydrates, we range all these different types of simple sugars into more complex. So we call those complex carbohydrates or polysaccharide. Poly meaning many, saccharide meaning sugar. There may be as few as 2 or as many as you needed to make the molecule. Simple sugars are often called disaccharides, or two simple disaccharides, or when we combine two simple sugars, we make a disaccharide. Di meaning two, saccharide meaning sugar. Some of these are really interesting. You have table sugar, which we call sucrose. Sugar in milk that some people can't have is called lactose. And then there's maltose, which is malt sugar like you would get in Whoppers and things like that. Polysaccharides are your starches, and they are basically going to be your potatoes, rice, breads, starchy things like that. Or technically, you can go with cellulose, which is actually what a lot of people call fiber. If you eat like cereal and it says it has so many grams of fiber, that is a large carbohydrate that you can't break down and is actually good for the bacteria in your gut. Polysaccharides are going to give you energy for sports and things like that. So if I ask you to write down some carbohydrates, what would you write? So some carbohydrates you might have could be, obviously you better have glucose. You could have fructose. You could say bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, table sugar, wheat. Cereal is a great source of carbohydrates. All of these are parts of your carbs. Be sure to check back in on our next lesson when we talk about proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. The next substance that we need to talk about is a lipid. Lipid is a thing such as fats and oils. They are made up of fatty acids, that's their monomer, and they store lots and lots of energy. They are very, very useful in waterproofing your cell walls. We used to put wax on our boots in the wintertime when we were growing up, and that helps keep the water out. They also store lots of energy, which is why lipids store, you get fat whenever you eat too much. Like my belly is from eating too much, and it stores the energy for it later. Proteins are organic compounds that are made up of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. If you've ever smelled eggs that went bad, that sulfur smell is from the sulfur that's in them. Proteins are found in meat, fish, nuts, beans, and eggs. They are the building blocks. They're made up of amino acids. So all of these compounds are made up of monomers. The monomer of a protein is an amino acid. There are 20 of them, but it's kind of like letters of the alphabet. You can rearrange the letters in so many different ways. You have a limitless number of proteins. You can have a limitless number of words too. There are proteins that are used for growth and repair. There are parts of your muscles, parts of your hair. There are parts of cells. They are parts of things like that. And let's talk a couple of these. You can have hemoglobin, is a protein that is in your red blood cells that helps to carry oxygen. You can have antibodies, which actually work. Like, say you get a cold, they are sort of like tattletales that say, hey, this virus isn't supposed to be here, and it triggers other cells to come and kill it. There are proteins called hormones. You, as adolescents, boys have testosterone, girls are developing estrogen. They're going to cause you guys to go through adolescence and puberty where your voices will change, guys. You'll get deeper and you'll start to get muscles. And girls, you'll get all of those womanly characteristics that are going to make you a mom. A very important group of proteins are the enzymes. Enzymes are catalysts. Those catalysts control chemical reactions that go on within the cell. Those chemical reactions drive every life process. Nucleic acids are the blueprints of life. They are made up of chains of A, adenine, T, thymine, C, cytosine, G, guanine, and U, uracil. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is where the genetic code of all living things is. It's very much like the code to your iPad or computer that tells the computer what to do. The proteins are made from genes in the DNA. The DNA is like the recipe. DNA tells the baker what to put together to make the cake. The RNA is like the baker that reads the recipe and bakes the cake. So the RNA reads the DNA and then builds the proteins. 2/3 of every cell is made of water. Water is polar due to its positive hydrogens and negative oxygen. So lipids are nonpolar. They don't have the positives and negatives. So lipids repel polar molecules. Which molecule is in each picture? You've got pasta, you've got oil, you've got this strand, and then you've got a steak. If you take some time at home, Obviously, the pasta is a carb. The oil is a lipid. This is a nucleic acid. And then the steak must be protein. Well, now it's time for a little science joke. If it says a bear dissolves in water, must be polar. Well, anything that dissolves in water has to be polar, not a polar bear. So here's a picture of water. If we look closely, these white molecules are the hydrogen, and they tend to form these positive charges, and the oxygen tends to form a negative charge. So if there was another oxygen here, these positives and negatives attract, and it gives them the polarity to stick together. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that takes me to the end of our lesson. Make sure you're getting your reading and your questions done. And until next time, be good, be safe. I'm Mr. Hescock, signing out.